There are 4 different tissue types in the body, and 2 of them that we consider greatly, and I'm just going to write that up here, that there are 4 different tissues in the body. 2 of them that we consider greatly with skin is epithelial tissue, which by definition lines an open space, but we also deal greatly with connective tissue, which we can abbreviate CT. There is muscle in the dermis, and we'll consider that there. There is also nervous tissue in the dermis, and we'll consider that there. And you can spell nervous any way you want. But in the epidermis, all that we have is epithelial tissue. So we drew a picture before that looked like the skin cells if you were to get very microscopically in on your own skin. And so the cells that line the outermost section of you, the most superficial cells, it's like a hard candy covering, those cells are actually epithelial cells. They have this flattened egg kind of shape to them. They kind of look like if you were to take a bunch of fried eggs and make like a pancake stack out of them. And I'm drawing these very flat here. But as you get deeper and deeper into the epidermis, they become more and more plump. And actually, at one point, you can start to see the nuclei that are in them. And you can start to see some connections between the cells, like these tight junctions. And that's because we're going to say that this is superficial, and we're going to say that this is deep. And we know that the cells that are superficial are dead, about to be sloughed off, and the cells that are deep are alive. And that's what accounts for the plumpness of these cells. Now, we know the tissue type that they correspond with is epithelial tissue, but within epithelial tissue there are specific types of epithelial tissue. This epithelial tissue is called stratified because there are many layers, and it's also called squamous. And this lines the interior of your mouth, the interior exterior border of your anus, as well as your urethra. Specifically, because this epithelial tissue that is stratified squamous, it exists in the organ of skin in the layer of the epidermis. And specifically, we call these cells, because of where they are in the epidermis, and because they're plump and filled with keratin, which is a waterproofing protein, we call these keratinocytes. So, which one of these names actually applies to these cells? All of them. The most specific name here is keratinocytes. Okay, bear with me. Just bear with me. So, also within skin, let's not take a cut of skin and look through it. Let's do like we did before. Let's just zoom in on the back of your hand. And what we'll see is the flat side of many of the fried eggs. Right down here, in this view, we saw like a transverse view, or a cut into the skin. Up here, I'm just viewing superficially. And what we see sometimes are these round little structures, and they have a lumen in the very, very center. I'm just going to color the lumen a light blue right now, just so we can recognize where it is, lumen, because I don't think I could put an L there and have it work out. But they also have the structures around them, like there are these cuboidal cells that are lining the lumen, and that is true. This is a sweat gland. Because the sweat gland has an open space, a lumen, it is surrounded by epithelial tissue. And because it's only one layer, we call it simple instead of stratified. And because the cells are cuboid in shape, we call this simple cuboidal. I'm not aware if those cells have an even more specific name, like sweatoglandocytes, I don't know, but that's a sweat gland, and it's kind of like a straw that's made up of those simple cuboidal tissues. All right, okay, so moving along, in skin, we have a very thin layer between the epidermis and the dermis that is called the papillary layer. And this is the papillary layer of the dermis. And the papillary layer has a lot of structures in it. It actually has some of these collagen structures in it. It actually has some reticular fibers in it. It also seems to have some elastic fibers in it, which are very, very thin and squiggly like this. There's a wealth of cells. We see fibrocytes. We see these other star-shaped cells. We see these other larger cells. There's just tons of different cells in it. And this tissue itself, it's a connective tissue, and this is called areolar tissue. If we go deeper into the dermis, we start to see an area that's full of collagen, and it's full of these bundles that are not arranged in any like parallel order or any specific order like that. They're just kind of all random. And this, also, there is a little, sometimes some reticular fibers running through it, not a lot of them. Sometimes there's elastic, but again, not a lot of that. We do see lots of different cells in here as well. Some star-shaped, some that look like Pac-Man, some that are fibrocytes. And this is called the dense, irregular connective tissue. And I should have said that for areolar as well. It's a connective tissue. And this is what's contained in the reticular layer of the dermis. So again, we're defining a layer of skin and a sublayer of skin, and then we're saying this is the type of tissue it contains. Now, this is an easy one. The hypodermis of skin that we said some people consider a layer, some people don't. The hypodermis of skin contains a connective tissue that's called adipose connective tissue. Now, these, what I'm drawing here, these are cells with their nuclei pushed all the way over to the side. And they do take on a pink stain and a little bit more of a purple stain on the nucleus. Sometimes you might be able to see like a collagen fiber in between them, but I doubt that seriously. These cells, they do have a specific name, and they are called adipocytes. Now, notice how with the areolar tissue and the dense irregular tissue, I did not say the types of the cells. There are many types of cells in these two types of tissues, but fibroblasts and fibrocytes are some of the more common.